The U.S. Embassy in Kabul is now calling for the Taliban to be held accountable for massacring Afghan civilians near the Pakistan border. The Afghan government says at least 100 civilians were killed by Taliban forces when they took control of that district. U.S. officials say the Taliban now holds control of half of the country's district centers. Meanwhile, the U.S. is expanding its Afghan visa program. Secretary Blinken announcing earlier today a window for vulnerable Afghans who do not qualify for special visas to come in as refugees. But he says those individuals will have to get themselves out of Afghanistan to a third country before the U.S. government can actually help them.
We've created a Priority 2, or P2 designation, granting access to the U.S. refugee admissions program for many of these Afghans and their family members. We take our responsibility to our Afghan partners deeply seriously.
All right, joining me now, NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube. Courtney, good to have you with us. So what do these State Department changes mean? How will they actually impact the lives of Afghans? How many are we talking about here?
So State Department officials are saying it's thousands, tens of thousands, even more than that, who are potentially eligible for this P2. But it's, as you mentioned, Eamon, this is very different than the special immigrant visa program that we've heard so much about in recent weeks. It mainly, the biggest difference is these people will have to get themselves and their families out of Afghanistan on their own and then begin the process of potentially becoming eligible for the P2. So what this does allow, though, is the people who are eligible for the special immigrant visa, they need to prove that they have 2 years of employment in the U.S. government while in Afghanistan, and then they need to have an employment verification. With this P2 designation, they don't need to have that. They need to have a sponsor, and there's extensive background checks, but they are able to skip that very difficult bureaucratic step of employment verification and the 2-year timeline. That's something that members of Congress have been calling for some time. So, but that doesn't, they still have the very real hurdle of being able to get themselves out of the country. Not all of these individuals are going to be based in Kabul. Many of them are spread throughout the country. And with the Taliban offensive that has swept through so much of the country and with fewer and fewer flights, it will be very difficult for people to get to Kabul and get themselves out if they can afford the flight and then afford to put themselves up in a third country for a year or more while they await the process of actually being eligible and getting their P2.
Courtney, talk to us a little bit about the dangers these Afghans face in their country, because, I mean, we have a sense of the danger the country collectively faces, but those that worked alongside the U.S. and certainly international partners, they are in a slightly even higher level of risk and danger.
Yeah, that's right. And if we just want one way to illustrate how dangerous it is for them, look at Kandahar province, which you mentioned in the intro, Eamon. There's an area there called Spin Boldak. Well, about 2.5 weeks ago, the Taliban took that over. The Afghan military they went in and they tried to take it back. They weren't successful initially. So in the aftermath of that, when the Afghan military retreated, the Taliban in the area went in and began systematically finding Afghans, local Afghans, who were supporters of the government. And according to the U.S. embassy there, according to the Afghan government, they began massacring dozens of people there. What the U.S. embassy is now calling a potential war crime and calling on Taliban leadership to be held responsible. But that's just one snapshot on the potential danger that many of these people face. This was them being endangered for supporting the Afghan government. The Taliban have already said that they see the U.S. as occupiers. We've been hearing about that for years. So Afghans who've been working for and supporting the American government, once the U.S. military is officially gone from there August 31st, they will face a terrible amount of danger and peril. And again, as the Taliban have swept through the country, they've been able to take over roads that would potentially take these men and women to Kabul to get out of Kabul airport. But it's going to be more and more difficult for them to travel and then potentially be impossible even for them to get out of the country. They will be facing a danger of the Taliban that they won't really be able to escape eventually, Eamon.